So in today's Stories from Storage, we're focusing on this watercolor by a Ukrainian artist and architect and ethnographer named Konstantin Moshchenko. At first glance, it just looks like a abstract geometric pattern, but there's a lot more behind it. And to explore that, we have our good friend Sofika Zielik from New York. She is a Pisanka artist and Pisanka scholar. The Pisanka, of course, being the Ukrainian wax resist decorated eggs, which are typically made in the spring traditionally and have many traditional patterns, and she has been studying them. And at first, it might not be obvious what the connection is, but that's what we're going to explore today. So welcome, Sofika. It's always great to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to talk about this man, Konstantin Moshchenko, because I had never heard of him until you told me about him. I came to your center, which is the best kept secret in the United States because it is the most amazing archival collection of, I'm going to say stuff, because you have everything. But I came to you because I was going to look at the Bible of the Pisanka world, the reproductions of Pisanka of Kuzhinsky. This is a whole big story. There are lots of images of Pisanka that weren't included in the books and so forth and so forth. And before I looked at that, you opened up a folder, and my reaction was, well, maybe to quote Oprah, aha. It was just, aha. Moshchenko did something that I did 10 years ago, and I thought I was being so original. But he was way, way ahead of me.
So just to give a little bit of background, Konstantin Moshchenko was born in the Sumy region in the 1870s, up in the far northeast corner of Ukraine. He studied architecture at the St. Petersburg Academy, the top art school of the Russian Empire. He graduated with an art degree in 1903, an architecture degree, and his first job out of school was as a junior architect on the team that led by Krychevsky, who was designing the Poltava Zemstvo building, which is now one of the most famous buildings of early 20th century Ukrainian architecture. He later got into the museum world, and we can talk much more about him and what is in his papers, which are here at the Ukrainian History and Education Center archives. Hundreds of drawings and watercolors and photographs and notes, but among his many interests was documenting folk art designs like embroidery designs and Pisanka designs. So go ahead. What did you find, Sofika?
Well, I found little tiny jewels, and by tiny, I mean some of them are small. They're maybe not even 2 inches by 2 inches. What Moshchenko started to do, he first started to take Pisanka. For example, I have a traditional Pisanka here from the Ternopil area, and he recreated that Pisanka, but he then, first of all, it's very difficult to take a Pisanka, a three-dimensional design, and put it on a flat paper. But he did that, and then he put a border around it, making it into a whole little painting. And he tied it all together, the border being the dots that are in this traditional work of the pagan earth goddess, the Berehenya. And you know, the way I can describe it is, you know, in literature, you have novels, you have poetry, you have essays, but you also have vignettes. And they're little slices of life. The way I can describe Moshchenko's work is vignettes in art. They're little slices of Pisanka. But then Moshchenko, for example, this is one of my favorite designs. It's a traditional design from the Podillia area. And Moshchenko did a little design of this. But he never finished the border. But the border, if you look at it, has leaves the same as in the flowers. So he tied in that, the leaves, the border, with the pisanka itself. But here, he's recreating the pisanka completely. He's getting a little more adventurous with these two traditional designs. They look like strawberries, but they're not. This is the tree of life here, the first one. And the second one is called Chonik. I'm not quite sure why it's called Chonik, but it's the pagan earth goddess. But in this case, he was a little adventurous. If you look at the painting that he created, he changed the colors of it, and he no longer did a rectangle or a square, he did a circle. And he took the pine needles that is in one of the pisanka, and he did a border of pine needles. He's taking the pisanka, you can see that it's a pisanka design, but he's adding his own take on it. And then something really adventurous. There are many tree of life pisanka. The 8-pointed star is prevalent all throughout pisanka, and very often the flower on a tree of life is the 8-pointed star. In his work, he put an 8-pointed star into an 8-pointed star into an 8-pointed star, and topped it off with not an angular border, but a very soft border, and then the same soft border, not an angular one, is on the top and bottom. Now, this is if I didn't know that Moshchenkov took his inspiration from the pisanka, I would never know it was from here. But my favorite design is the one that we started with. This is the traditional pisanka from the Volyn area. Moshchenkov first, he tilted the pisanka that way, and you can see how it corresponds with his design. Then he took that design and he completely deconstructed it, reworked it, put in new colors, and it looks like a kaleidoscope. I can see somebody turning the kaleidoscope, and that's how the design comes out. Now, this is very exciting to me because unless an artist says in his biography, I took my inspiration from this and this, it's very subjective. But this is a line, this is a thread from the actual traditional pisanka design to a completely modern, almost abstract work.
And if you weren't convinced by that, the text on the bottom here, and we think that these may have actually been part of some sort of small exhibition that he did. So he after World War II, he ended up in Germany. He was in a displaced persons camp. This may have been done in a displaced persons camp, but there is a label on the bottom here in Ukrainian, written in Polish orthography, and then in English, and then in German. And the English says, model of colored eggs on the plane, where somebody has mistranslated and used the wrong plane. They said P-L-A-I-N instead of P-L-A-N-E. But it's very clear that he's telling you, this is what I'm doing.
That's why I was so excited when I actually saw him. But, I said I had an aha moment looking at Moshchenkov. There is another Kostiantin, because Moshchenkov's first name is Kostiantin, that I studied. I was living in KU in 2014, 2015, and I was researching how folk art influenced fine artists in the early part of the 20th century. And there was an artist, Kostiantin Piskorsky, who's not very well known now, but that will change very quickly. He died when he was 30 years old in 1922. But he also took Pisanke and created works of art. And I remember when I was in the National Archives at the St. Sophia complex in Kiev, I was holding pieces of paper. What he did, there was a book that came out in Eastern Ukraine of traditional designs from the Chernihiv region. He took those designs and exactly drew them on a piece of paper. Then he took those designs and combined them in a work of art in the shape of an egg. Now, if you didn't see the designs from the Chernihiv area, you would not have known that his masterpiece was based on it. But again, it's the thread. You see the eggs, you see his sketches, you see everything. And what I'm doing now is I'm taking his masterpiece, which was taken from a three-dimensional egg onto a plane, a flat plane, his masterpiece, and I'm taking it back on a three-dimensional egg and bringing it full circle. So that those two Konstantins are very important to me. And I just thought of something. When I was in high school, one of my assignments was to plan a fictitious dinner, a fictional dinner, invite 20 guests, past or present, that I wanted to talk with. And if I had to do it now, I would invite both Konstantins, seat them on either side of me, and listen to their discussions, because I think that would be absolutely fascinating.
So yeah, so this is just another example of the amazing stories that archives can tell by, again, providing not just a finished product of a work, but actually showing everything that went into it, and all the maybe the unfinished drafts or the sketches or the other materials that fed into it. And that's what artists' archives are fantastic at, including places like the Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian Institution or other collections are really amazing in this regard, being able to tell those kinds of stories. So
when you have these archives, you don't see the finished product, but you see the whole progression. Sometimes you look at a work of art and you think, a lot of times I hear this, oh, my 5-year-old can do it. But if you see the work, the thought, that the inspiration, the muse, the whatever you want to call it, it's much more than just, oh, my 5-year-old can do it. There's a whole process to this.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Sofika, for joining us for this conversation. It's been really interesting. I know how excited you were about it, and I'm glad you were able to convey that excitement to our audience. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.